This video is sponsored by Only Crits. One of the reasons that I make videos about character creation, and the reason I have a whole playlist about all the different methods you can use to create your character in D&D or various other games, is because I think it's really useful to see methods other than the same character creation method you might personally tend to use. If you always start with choosing a class or an ancestry, it might be really interesting to see what it would look like if you started with a background or a high concept, or you let the dice decide for you. And especially, I want to make sure new players know that there is no one right way to create a character. There's no correct answer. These are all just different approaches you can use to find some nugget of an idea that you can expand into a full character. The point is, you can find inspiration from lots of different approaches. But sometimes I think new players are not the ones who have to learn that lesson. Veteran players are the ones who tend to get stuck in specific rhythms, or tend to establish more criteria for themselves as they create their characters. And that's not a bad thing. For example, if you watch a lot of my character creation videos, you'll notice that I very frequently try to make sure that my characters have a really good reason to go on adventures with other players. That's because I've seen a lot of people create characters where they fail to account for the fact that this is going to be a member of a larger team, and trying to fold them into a larger group ends up causing a lot of friction. In this way, this does kind of narrow the scope of my character creation process, but in a way that I think is useful. New players don't have those same kinds of habits, which is why so many new players tend to repeat familiar problems we've seen a lot in this hobby over the past 50 years. You've got a lot of lone wolf edgelords who have no friends or family or important NPCs and no clear reason to go on a mission. Or on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you might have characters who have a super clear objective with a finite endpoint and no real sense of what will happen when they get what they want and have to find a new reason to go on another D&D adventure with other people. However, just because a lot of new players sometimes default to the same archetypes, like the edgelord or the main character or the joke character, that does not mean that new players are bad at making characters, because I just don't think that's true. In fact, sometimes I think new players can find inspiration just about anywhere, in ways that might not be true about a lot of veteran players. Because veteran players have so much experience, they might have a checklist of do's and don'ts that they feel make a great character. New players can really come into the character creation process with a total blue sky approach, and can wind up making truly brilliant characters through completely unconventional methods. And there's probably no better example of that than the character of Tyranny, played by Whitney Moore in the 4th campaign of Critical Role. Now, I don't really know how new she is as a player to D&D. I know she'd played a little bit with Critical Role in the past. She's a longtime geek. She'd made a bunch of appearances on LA by Night, so she does have some experience with tabletop RPGs in general. In the interview we're about to discuss today, she did say she didn't know that demons weren't a playable species in D&D, but I don't really know if she's played a lot of other games and she's new to D&D, or if she played D&D a long time ago but just hadn't played in a while and didn't know what races were playable these days. Ultimately, it doesn't actually matter. The point is, her character was inspired by an idea she had, not something she saw in the core book. And to me, this kind of speaks to the idea of how new players, whether they're new to RPGs in general, or just new to D&D, or new to this edition of D&D, as Whitney and many of the other players were. But new players can sometimes come in with these truly off-the-wall ideas that aren't based on the established canon or the tropes of the game. And in a lot of ways, that frees them up to find completely different points of inspiration and to create very unique characters. I'm going to try to avoid any major spoilers for Campaign 4. We're going to talk about some things that we learned about Tyranny in the first episode, and pretty much leave it at that. Very briefly, Tyranny is a warlock, and she's a demon. She's not a tiefling, she's a literal demon from hell. She has bubblegum pink skin, goat ears, and white hair. She has a very cool aesthetic. And in an interview with thepopverse.com that was released on New Year's Eve, she revealed that the aesthetic for this character was inspired by... Okay. Before I get to this next part, I want you to know that I originally was not planning on making another spicy video this year. Last year, around Valentine's Day, I made a video about an X-rated game of D&D that I ran for my wife and her friends. And in the last few months of 2025, I got a couple comments and tweets from people who were asking if I was going to do a follow-up, something else kind of spicy for Valentine's Day this year. But I didn't have anything planned, I didn't have any ideas, so I really wasn't going to worry about it. And then, on New Year's Eve, I saw this article and I realized I had to talk about this. Obviously, I didn't manage to get this video out in time for Valentine's Day. I'm like a month late. But consider this my belated Valentine's Day contribution. Because Whitney Moore's character in Campaign 4 of Critical Role was inspired by two things. The artwork of comics artist and frequent Critical Role contributor Babs Tarr, and Whitney Moore's vibrator wand. We're all going to be adults about this, right? Because this video is going to reference spicy things like that, and I just want us to be normal about it. And if that's not your thing, if you're already uncomfortable hearing me talk about this, no harm, no foul. I'll see you in the next video. But if you want to stick around for a while, let's talk about this. Jesus Christ. Who the fuck are you?
I am Itization, the demon, and I'm here to make sure this video makes absolutely no ad revenue.
What are you gonna do?
Well, you mentioned that this video was going to include a bunch of adult content.
Yeah, that's why I want people to be normal about this.
Well, I'm not going to be normal about it. I'm going to report this video to YouTube for violating their terms of service.
I mean, you can try, but a certain amount of discussion is allowed, as is showing these toys on camera. I can't show them doing their thing or whatever, but I can talk about them. That's not an issue.
Well, I'm going to make it an issue. I'm going to look for every opportunity I can find where you might potentially cross the line of acceptable behavior, and when I find it, I'm going to report this video.
Okay, fair enough. If somebody does try to get this video demonetized, I'll assume it was a literal cartoon demon.
Of course! Otherwise, the only other sort of person who would report this video is some kind of sick little loser who has nothing better to do with his time.
But if you try to get this video demonetized, then doesn't that mean you are a sick little loser with nothing better to do with his time?
Yeah, I like it when you call me names. That's my kink.
Ugh, gross. Well, like I said, unless you're literally a weird, gross little demon looking for an opportunity to tattle on me to YouTube, I'm going to assume that if you're still here, you're ready to be mature about this topic. So, let's proceed. Okay, so this is the interview from thepopverse.com, and the interviewer asks Whitney where the inspiration for Tyranny's aesthetic came from, and here was Whitney's response. I was really positive that I wanted her to be a pink demon with white hair. I don't know how I got on that. And then one day when we were doing the character, I was at home, and I looked down at my vibrator wand, and it is covered in Babs Tar stickers, and one of them was a pink demon. And I was like, oh my god. And when the article went live, Whitney Moore verified the authenticity by posting a picture of the wand itself. Here it is. As you can see, there are drawings of a sexy naked demon tied up shibari style. The stickers are printed with bright pink line art and light pink fill, so that's the inspiration for the pink demon. And the wand itself is white, so that's the inspiration for the white hair. And as some people pointed out ever since this article was published, Tyranny as a character is pretty sexual. So you could definitely interpret that as a potential point of inspiration coming from the fact that she was literally inspired by a sex toy. But Whitney basically said that the aesthetic was inspired by this toy, although I see a lot of Tyranny's attitude in the face of the succubus on both of these stickers. Tyranny definitely has a little bit of bratty sub energy. Now, as you heard in the interview, Whitney Moore didn't deliberately conjure this character based on this wand. It was subconscious. She decorated the wand, she had it as part of her recreational life, and then when she was creating a D&D character of her own, she unconsciously drew upon these images and this color scheme and didn't make the connection until later on. And now Tyranny has become her own distinct character. She's not a joke character, she's a full person with her own stuff going on. Like with any process we talk about on this channel, this is just a way to find a piece of inspiration that led to a more developed character. Once again, I cannot overstate this. Whitney Moore did not sit down trying to come up with a character and thought, I know what I'll do. I'll order some sexy stickers and a sex toy, and I'll see if the combination gives me an idea for an aesthetic. This all happened subconsciously. But is this a process you could use to create a D&D character? Could you actually deliberately follow some of these same steps and come up with an interesting character? Well, when you're trying to figure out whether or not something can be classified as a process, there's really only one thing you need to know: whether or not it can be replicated. So I signed up for Babstar's Patreon and I got some stickers. Now, am I doing this because I wanted to get some stickers for this video? Yes, obviously, duh. But I'm also just happy to support Babstar. She's a really talented artist. I've been a fan of hers for a long time. She's actually got a new comic coming out right now, Sirens Love Hurts. It stars Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Black Canary. They're working together to hunt down a serial killer. And obviously this video is not sponsored by Babstar or DC Comics, although that would be amazing. But my point is that she has this really cool, energetic style to her artwork that I've always thought was incredibly appealing. She's really talented. But also, on her Patreon, she draws lots of really sexy artwork, and I've always been a fan from afar, but I wanted to finally show up and support the artist. But also, for the purposes of today's video, we're going to check out the stickers that she sent me, and we're going to see how they might be able to inspire us to create the aesthetic of a new D&D character. Alright, I got my stickers from Babstar. Let's open it up and see what we got. Ooh, perfect. Makes perfect sense because we have the new comic coming out, Love Hurts, starring the Sirens, but this is Harley Quinn. These are fantastic stickers. Okay, there's 3 of them, and we have Harley with long pink hair, and we have like pink skin, but I think that's just sort of the style. We don't necessarily have to go that literal with it the way that Whitney Moore did, but we have these very fantastical outfits, very in line with Harley Quinn. And I think it's important to note that we are not going to recreate Harley Quinn just because we have these stickers that look like Harley. You know, we're not trying to create that exact character. We are really just going for a physical vibe and appearance. But also we have a character who's using a gigantic hammer and a baseball bat, and who dresses in this sort of, I don't really know how to describe these outfits at all, other than to say that's what Harley Quinn wears these days, which I think is a very specific, unique appearance. Yeah, I think we have an idea for a sort of colorful, chaotic character. A lot of pinks, reds, and blacks. So now that we've looked at the stickers, and before we move on to the next part, let's hear from today's sponsor, Only Crits. Hello there, Winnie the Pooh here to tell you all about today's sponsor, Only Crits. Only Crits is a fantastic dice company that has a truly fantastic selection of dice for any character you might want to play. For example, based on the color scheme of this character, I would actually recommend Mike buys the Coral Illusion Metal dice set, which looks pink at first glance, but it actually has all these other colors that shift across it as you look at the dice, just like the holographic stickers. Or we could get the transparent pink otter dice, which are clear dice that have little pink otters inside of them. Or we could get the Celestial Heart Fuck Me Sharp Edge dice, which are, you know, thematically relevant to today's video, but they also say fuck you on the 20 and fuck me on the 1, so they're just a lot of fun to roll. These dice help capture the chaotic energy of a character who was even partially inspired by Harley Quinn. So it works really well. These are great dice, and perfect for this character, or for your own character. And if you visit onlycrits.com/supergeekmike and use the promo code SUPERGEEK at checkout, you'll be able to save 15% off your order. Once again, that's onlycrits.com/supergeekmike and use the promo code SUPERGEEK. Thank you so much to OnlyCrits for sponsoring this video. Cheerio! Okay, so thanks to these stickers, we have our aesthetic. At least half of it. Because the second half of the equation is, we're going to choose a toy. Fortunately, I have quite a collection to choose from, so let's take a look.
Aha! You can't argue that this is for educational purposes. You're just going to show off your collection of sex toys because you're trying to brag. If you show any of the toys you've actually used in your personal life, you're not only opening the door to invite your audience into your literal bedroom, but you're also stripping away any last vestige of privacy you might have. And you're only doing so for personal vanity, as some sort of weird flex about how kinky you think you are, as if that's something other people should think is novel or interesting, as opposed to just being a weird, gross overshare. So if you show off any of these toys, that's not educational and I'm going to report you.
You know what? I think there's a valid point to be made there. I do still think it would not be an issue from an ad revenue perspective. I don't think it's enough to get the video demonetized, but maybe I don't need to actually show off any of my own home collection for this exercise. I don't think that's actually necessary. Additionally, it occurs to me that if I'm choosing a toy, I'm kind of deciding on a toy that I think could help inspire a D&D character. For example, let's say I already know I want to play a rogue. I could just choose the quietest toy. If I wanted to play a spellcaster who controls people from afar, I could choose a toy that has a remote function. If I already want to play a character who lunges forward and thrusts at people, you get the idea. Additionally, I don't think it makes sense for me to choose a toy for this exercise at all. After all, Whitney didn't look for the perfect toy that she thought was going to help inspire her D&D character. So if I know I'm looking for a toy for that purpose, then that's going to sway my decision making. What I need is the ability to choose from a library of options without those options being necessarily tied to my own collection or otherwise saying anything about my personal life. And I need to randomly choose a toy from this list. So we're going to cut back to the kitchen table, and I'm going to pull up a website where you could find a whole bunch of these toys, and I'm going to get this good solid list of options, and then I'm going to figure out how many are on that page. I'm going to randomly roll to choose a toy that we can use as part of our inspiration for this exercise.
Oh, come on. You're going to scroll through a whole list of sex toys with pictures on screen. Not only will many of these be extremely explicit and not the kind of stuff you can show on YouTube, but you're also doing free advertising for a company? You're mine now. I'm going to report the hell out of this video.
I'll go ahead and blur the page.
Oh, damn it.
Okay. Bestsellers. This is what I was looking for. It's just some sort of simple page. Okay. 34 products. Okay, let's roll a D4 and a D20 and a D10. It's not gonna be exact. It's just gonna give us a starting point. We're gonna subtract 2 from this. 13 plus 6 is 19, plus 3 is 22, minus 2. So we're looking at number 20. All right, so we have here a Pleasure Kits Explorer collection with various restraining options. It's in black, if that means anything. Maybe this character was a prisoner? Is that anything? She's wearing a mask, and there's a mask in this picture. Different kind of mask. Is that anything? We have a chaotic character. That much I know. I was going to say chaotic neutral for their alignment. What we also have are some restraint items. And we have weapon mastery. We have weapon mastery. That's part of 2024 now. What weapons give us some sort of restraining opportunity? Slow. Slow's not bad, actually. These items would slow you down considerably. Topple. That's also pretty good. And Vex. If you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to the creature, you have advantage on your next attack roll against this creature. Okay, not really what we're looking for. Slow and topple. So a club would be slow, and that's really what a baseball bat is. Sure. Topple would be a quarterstaff. What about the hammer? What is the warhammer? Push? Okay. Do they also have a whip? Yep, there's a whip. Okay. Okay. Is there a lasso in this version of the game? I don't really think there is. No, that's okay. Whip is good. Whip has the slow mastery. Okay. All right. Okay. So, what class or background starts with a whip? I'll save you some time. I'll summarize this next section. No, there's not any class or background that starts with a whip or a club or a warhammer, which would be the closest thing to Harley Quinn's mallet. But that's fine. You could just choose to not take the standard starting equipment and instead take the gold and buy the weapons you wanted. But it just means we're not any closer to finding our character through the starting equipment of any particular class. But I kept going through the backgrounds to see if any of them had some item that might match what you find in this particular entry on the website. Is there anything that feels like an equivalent of anything that's part of that particular kit? The sailor does come with rope. Actually, I imagine anybody who has the Pleasure Kits Explorer collection comes with rope. Explorer. Oh, yeah. Okay. Explorer. Sailor background. Sure. Tavern Brawler. Tavern Brawler gives us... We just talked about this in a video last week. Unarmed attacks get a bonus. So this could be a monk. Interesting. Okay. It doesn't have to be, but like... it kind of makes the most sense. And I wonder about those monk weapons, because a baseball bat is not that different from a quarterstaff. Simple weapons and martial weapons that have the light property. Okay, so no, the whip is finesse and reach, so you wouldn't even get the benefits. You wouldn't be able to use a whip. So yeah, we're not going to go with a monk. So maybe we'll go with a fighter. They have proficiency with everything. Unarmed fighting. When you hit with your unarmed strike and deal damage, you can deal bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength modifier instead of the normal damage of an unarmed strike. If you aren't holding any weapons or a shield when you make the attack roll, the d6 becomes a d8. At the start of each of your turns, you can deal 1d4 bludgeoning damage to one creature grappled by you. Oh, yes. Okay, so a fighter with a whip and the unarmed fighting style would basically be a grappler. That's really interesting. And she's sort of wee and petite, but that doesn't mean she's not still capable. Strength modifier, she'd have a very high strength. That would kind of be a requirement of this character, but she doesn't have to look it. So yeah, I think this is a fighter with the sailor background. We'll go human because the character is human. Well, let's go ahead and place some ability scores. And you know what? Because this character is such a random character, we're going to go with rolling for stats. I'm not going to set up another camera, I don't have to blur another page, so you're just gonna have to trust my rolls here. 654, so that's 15. Bad. 8. 5, 4, 3, 2. That's funny. So 5, 4, 3 gives us 7, 8, it's 12. 3 4s and a 2, so 12. Very average stats so far. Bad. 2, 2, 3. So 5, 6, 7. This last one better be real good. Otherwise, this is going to be a terrible character. It was actually pretty good. 13. Okay, that's a pretty decent spread, actually. Strength, dexterity, and wisdom. Okay, yeah, that's perfect. That's kind of what we need. And then wisdom and intelligence are both going to be below, which is not accurate to Harley Quinn. But again, we're not trying to build Harley Quinn. We're building the grappler, I guess. Whoever we're going to call this character. That is not like her official name by any means. But she does have a whip. So what we're going to do is roll for some personality traits, even though I think I have an idea for who this character is based on the vibe of the drawing. That is the nice thing about these drawings, is they do a very good job of telling us a lot about this character. We learned a lot from the Pleasure Kits Explorer collection as well, which is that they're an explorer. All right, we got high strength, 2, sinewy. That's perfect, actually. Sinewy character. Then for intelligence and wisdom are both low. So let's see what happens. For intelligence, we have uninformed. Okay. So they just don't know a lot about the world. Could be kind of naive. Could be a conspiracy theorist who like literally thinks everything is backwards from what it actually is. Both would be good. For low wisdom, we got a 2. Distracted. That's perfect. This character is very distracted and sort of flighty and sort of off in their own world. That absolutely makes sense for who we have on these stickers. You know, I was going to say this character needs a name, but if we're drawing inspiration from stickers, her name is on here. It does say Harley. So we're just going to use the name Harley, but this is not Harley Quinn. This character is just named Harley. It just so happens that they wear a lot of black and red and have pink hair and walk around with a whip, which is a different approach to the character, for sure. They're a sailor. And let's give them an alignment. I'm going to say chaotic, neutral. Feels like it makes the most sense. Let's roll for some personality traits. Chaotic would be boastful. Sure, that tracks. And neutral would be pragmatic. I just did that last time. Let's get something different. Laconic? No. But what would happen if it was chaotic good instead? 1, compassionate. Yeah, I think that's actually better. We're going to go with chaotic good. We're going to say compassionate. Now, again, is this totally accurate for Harley Quinn? No, doesn't have to be. I'm not making Harley Quinn. I'm making Harley the grappler, who's a sailor and an explorer and a person who uses the Pleasure Kits Explorer collection. But what I am also interested in is a character who seems kind of flighty and absent-minded, but still like ultimately has their heart in the right place. A little bit more of a jester vibe from Critical Role, from the Mighty Nine. And I also just like the energy of Harley Quinn more than like every iteration of the character. Like, I'm just thinking about Birds of Prey and that incredible sequence when she storms the police station.
Like a baby.
Not gonna lie, that energy is pretty much exactly what's fueling me right now in 2026. So I think I'm gonna just go listen to the Birds of Prey soundtrack, maybe fill in a couple more details, and I'll meet you back over at the other table. Now, obviously, this character was a little tricky for a few reasons, not the least of which is because these stickers wound up depicting an actual pre-existing character I was already familiar with to tie into the release of this new comic book. And that was really difficult to shake that idea when building this character, because throughout the entire process, you're comparing this character to Harley Quinn, whether you mean to or not. However, I have to say, playing a fighter with a whip and a warhammer still feels like the beginning of a really interesting character. I have no doubt that if I brought this character to the table, I would be able to flesh them out and make them a lot more complex. Honestly, considering this character is both not very bright, but also incredibly compassionate, the final details of this character would not be in place until I knew who else was in the party, because as you would get to know the other characters in the party, it would basically bring out different aspects of her personality, much like how we saw more aspects of Tyranny's character through her interactions with Wikander. That being said, this is not exactly the video I was expecting to make. So if you want me to tackle this topic again, next Valentine's Day, using some Babstar artwork of one of her original characters, or at the very least a character that I'm not as intimately familiar with as the Gotham City Sirens, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'll make a whole party of characters based on stickers I receive throughout the year. I'm not sure, maybe. Maybe I'd even build those characters using resources that are designed to bring more spicy content into your D&D game, like specifically through mechanics. That might be fun. But you know, I haven't thought about it that much. It just depends on if people are interested.
Yes, I do. So hope you make another video full of explicit sexual material. We'll see you next year.
Well, that was easy. Throughout the year, I've had these Monsters of the Week popping up for a video or two, and then I have to find some way to defeat them. But this time, I didn't even have to do anything. He just finished himself off. Ew. But even without the threat of demonetization, I have no idea how this video is going to perform. It's about the new Critical Role campaign, but it's also a fairly niche topic that I know a lot of people aren't going to want to click on or watch all the way through. For my next video, I just need something safe, something guaranteed to do at least solid numbers. Thanks so much for watching. By the way, I have actually been reading Sirens Love Hurts. I read the first issue. The second one should be coming out around the release of this video, and I've been really enjoying it. This, again, is not an ad, but it was just a neat comic, and I actually got to go back to a comic book shop for the first time in like a decade to go pick up this comic, and that was just really nice and cool. I've also been, unrelated, cleaning out my garage at home, and I realized I have a whole bunch of comic books that I've owned for a long time, but that I haven't actually read. A bunch of trade paperbacks, so I'm finally catching up on some of those as well. I'm currently reading Walt Simonson's Thor run. It's pretty good. Go figure. It's a very, very famous run for a reason. It's got Beta Ray Bill in it. Other stuff probably is also happening, but like I'm really enjoying the comic. It's also really funny that they took away Thor's secret identity as the scrawny, nerdy Dr. Donald Blake, but they gave him a new secret identity where he just puts on glasses like Clark Kent, and then he bumps into Clark Kent in the hallway. This comic rules. Maybe I should find some way to talk about it in the future, but I don't know how I'd fit it into one of these videos. But I don't know, maybe on Patreon if people are interested. I don't know. We'll see. Speaking of being interested, if you were interested in this video, if you like this video, like the video, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube stuff, ring the bell, all the YouTube things. You know, you've been on YouTube before, and if you haven't been on YouTube before, this is a weird video to start with. Don't forget to watch this most recent video I put out. It's all about world building and how your character could fit into a larger world and how to make that work when you're the game master or the player. And so watch that video right here. And until next time, play fair. And have fun.